All right, welcome everyone to this build infrastructure call at the Eclipse Foundation. We're making some pretty big changes. We thought it would be good to invite everyone over so that we can show you what it is that we're doing, and most importantly, take on your questions and possible concerns. As you're going to see coming up, we're planning some pretty big changes. But we're making every effort, we're investing every effort to make sure that it has the least amount of impact on our projects. My name is Denis Roy. You probably know me as one of the Eclipse webmasters. I'm in the IT division of Eclipse Foundation. I run the servers and the software.
I'm Mikaël Barbero. I work for the foundation as well. So you know me mostly for my release engineering involvement. So I help project to build stuff and help to maintain the infra. And I've been working on this migration for a couple of months now. And I'm really happy to be able to show that to you now. And we have Stuart as well from CloudBees.
Yeah, hi guys. It's Stu Brown from CloudBees Professional Services. I'm working with the guys at the moment, looking at CloudBees Jenkins and how this will affect you, and I'm going to help hopefully make it successful for you.
All right, Mikaël, take it away.
Okay, thank you. So as you may know, today we have quite a big infrastructure, a big farm of Jenkins instances. So we currently have about 200 of them, and each of them is running. Each of them is dedicated to a single project. So for each of you, you probably have already your own Jenkins instance, and what you may not know or may just have heard on it a bit about is that all those instances are running on only 10 beefy machines with a lot of CPUs and RAM. And that's exactly what we are trying to improve, to change, to make it more efficient and so on. So what are the issues with the current infrastructure? So if we look a bit more into detail, so as you can see there, so I only shown 3 machines. So before migration to Jenkins, we used to call them HIP for Hudson instance per project. It should have been renamed to JIP, but I was too easy to reduce this this diagram. So anyway, I only show 3 machines there in green, and you can see that each master Jenkins master runs on one of those machines, but you don't really know because those machines are pretty much equal to each other. What you may see, however, is that if one project runs a big build on one machine and another machine can be silent or do not run anything at the same time, and you won't be able to use the power from another machine, which is just lying on the infra and waiting for some jobs to execute. So that's something that we'd like to address. And even if we move to the best practice that Jenkins recommend for quite a long time now, is to not execute anything on the master instance of Jenkins, to execute everything on slaves, we would still face the same issue because each slave would run on a dedicated machine, and we don't have any pool of resources that we could use and that we could share among all those projects and all those Jenkins master. So today's infra, compared to what we had before with a single Jenkins master or Hudson master for all the project, it's fortunately have some advantages. So each project decide about the plugins they want or need to be installed. Previously, it was not possible because everyone was using the same instance, so it has to be a consensus. And also, each Jenkins instance has its own life cycle, meaning that if we want to restart one Jenkins instance, it does not affect any other one. However, what we probably missed when we moved to this infra is that the isolation between project is now at the scale we are now running the whole farm a real issue. So a single job running on a single machine could affect all other jobs on the machine. Also, it was quite manageable to provide a set of build tools to all of our projects when 99% of them were using Maven and were Java-based software. But now that we have large diversity of projects which use very various build tools, either for Java or C, C++, and IoT and whatnot, it's just a mess to provide all of this, and to not be able to let project be self-served about their build tools is a huge issue with this infra. And also we noticed that the hardware, despite it is quite beefy, it's really underused. And I guess that it's against your point of view, where you can feel like that your builds are slow, and you may think that the infra is just lagging behind that. But the fact is that we are using very very few of our hardware, and we would like to improve that. And the last thing about the today's infra is that it doesn't scale very well. We are onboarding a lot of new projects with the recent coming of E4J in Jakarta, and to onboard a couple of dozen of projects, it's just a mess with our current infra. We need to add a lot of more machines and to move things around, and just very time consuming, and we'd like to do better. And so about what we would like to do better, and the fact that it's time consuming. In the beginning, when we had to manage only dozens or a couple of dozens of Jenkins master, it was easy, doable by hand or with the help of a couple of scripts. But managing 200 of them, and most probably 3,000 of them by the end of the year is just not doable. So we want to spend more time on other areas that you have been where you have been requesting support from a couple of weeks, months, or a year for a couple of them. So I let you read what I've listed there, but of course it's not exhaustive. So the goal of this whole migration is first to pool our hardware, to create a pool of resources and to make a better use of it. We would like also to be able to scale better, so to add additional resources, either coming from cloud providers or by buying new machines and adding into the farm. Something that I've been requested for a long time now is to be able for project to build inside containers, so they have the power to define their own build environment with the tools that we need. And currently, for security reasons, for the fact that projects are co-located on bare metal machines, we can't really provide Docker's container to everyone. We also really would like to make this new setup to use this migration to better isolate projects from each other, so that you will have predictable build time, and you won't be affected by someone on the same machine that you don't know of. And of course, we like all of this to also provide better availability, and that Jenkins instances self-restart when something bad happens, and so on. So we've studied a couple of solutions, and we've come up with a duet solutions. So the infrastructure will now be managed by a Kubernetes cluster. This Kubernetes cluster will be actually a Kubernetes distribution provided by Red Hat, the OpenShift container platform, for those of you who know about it. And we will migrate from the Jenkins open source version to CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, which basically for you means no change. The CloudBees OSS and CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise share the same foundations, and the UI is not different, and so on. So no panic on that. And we'll talk more about the differences between those two, but at first you can just think of the same thing for you.
I'd just like to take just a moment to thank our friends both at CloudBees and Red Hat for their generosity, both in terms of software that they're allocating to us and in terms of the support that they're giving us. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. And thank you, Denis, for mentioning that. I was about to forget. So about CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, if we look at it from a very high point of view, and it's really not how it works technically on top of Kubernetes, but you can see that as an operation center, the Jenkins operation center at the top that manage all the Jenkins masters, so all the instances that you are currently using at the Eclipse Foundation. And you can see that this operation center can provide a pool of agents, of slaves to those masters, and they will just take a lease or ask for an executor to this operation center, and we get it. And the really nice thing about all of this is that all our hardware will be pooled, and you won't have any interference between projects. And I guess that Stu have more to say about it, but I just wanted to introduce this schema from an Eclipse project point of view.
Yeah, sure. So let me, if I may, I can just go through a few of the benefits you're going to receive from using CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. If everybody can see the slide that's being displayed at the moment. Now, I've had discussions already about how you're set up at the moment, with each project having their own master. A lot of projects have their own build agents or nodes for various reasons, either lack of resources or you have a very specific requirement. Now, the benefits they're going to have now is if we introduce what we refer to as Jenkins Operations Center. Now, as a team, you won't have much interaction with this. This is for the guys to create new masters. It is also for them to be able to monitor what's going on in the environment. But there's some benefits that are happening under the covers for you. The role-based access, for example, is all done via the operations center. Those configurations and those access methods are then all pushed out to each and every master. So I know at the moment it's likely that a team has access to one master. However, if an individual was working on more than one project, maybe unlikely. As they log into Jenkins Operations Center, they will be displayed with either directly into the master that they have access to, maybe their main project, or if they did have more than one project and it was on different masters, they'd be able to access both of them. So it's a single point of entry.
Actually, Stu, it is a good point, because there are a lot of people who work on a lot of projects. I say that because you said it was unlikely, but it is a
That's great. That's great then. And with the role-based access, the good thing is, as you configure that role-based access, then you log into the operations center. If you're only configured to look at one project, that's all you'll see. You'll see a slightly different view if you're configured to two. You just choose, as you go into the first level of access, you just choose which project you want to look at. So that is a benefit. So that's good news. That's going to make it much easier for everybody to configure your access as well. We're going to try and make far more use of role-based access, and with CloudBees Jenkins, the role-based access that comes with it is far more powerful than what you'd get with standard Jenkins. One of the big benefits we have, and without going too deep into the history of what's happened with CloudBees Jenkins, we're installing what we refer to as CJE, so CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise 2, and that's our new offering, which is making use of Kubernetes. Our previous versions, which were a very good tool, were not using Kubernetes, but as things have moved on and Kubernetes has really taken over, we've decided now that that's what we're going to be concentrating on. The benefits of this is with regard to how you perform your builds. So at the moment, you have a mixture. You have some shared build nodes, and you have some build nodes that, from what I understand, are under the control of the teams concerned. Now, that doesn't have to change. You can still have your specific bespoke build node attached to your specific Jenkins master, as what we refer to as a managed master. It's a small amount of configuration, but it's a few clicks to allow that master to connect to, allow that build node to connect to the master. So that's fine, that works. Now, the other benefit is shared build nodes across teams. Now, these are physical or virtual nodes that have been configured. So if we look at the side of the screen, these shared build nodes, they actually connect into the operations center just for communication. And then through configuration, you allow all or a subset of the masters provisioned to allow to run builds on those particular nodes. So that's benefit. We're sharing very efficiently throughout the whole estate of managed masters. So that's good. The most beneficial, however, way of doing this is by using containers. Now, as we're provisioning on Kubernetes, I'm sure most people understand some terminology about Kubernetes and a Kubernetes pod. A pod can run multiple containers. So through configuration that is handled on either your master or through Jenkins pipeline configuration, which we can cover a little bit more in a moment, you can specify a build that can run either in one single container on demand in a Kubernetes pod, or you can get more adventurous. You can run more than one container in a pod. So for example, if your build is doing 2 or 3 different types of operation that needs different types of resources in the container, you can mix and match. So that's a massive benefit for you. And for the state of the Eclipse Foundation, this is good because we're making use of the resources they're now going to allocate to the Kubernetes cluster. So that's really great use of reuse of nodes. One final thing we need to look at here as well. I mentioned that we can put the shared build nodes within the operations center. The nodes themselves on the left-hand side, these can be configured by the team managing their own master. It's all dependent on what level of access seems fit in the configuration. I'm due on site on the 29th of May to work with the guys, and we're going to go through, install CJE, find the best setup that's going to work, and hopefully give you lots of more configuration. Guys, I've got more that I can discuss about the benefits and what CJE will do. Do you want to carry on and I cover any more at the end? How does that work for you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stu.
No problem.
Sorry. So if we go a bit over, what is our plan for moving to Kubernetes, OpenShift, and CloudBees Jenkins? So we already have OpenShift running on the foundation infra. So we have some dedicated machine running a small cluster. and we plan to have CG set up and running by the end of the month. And as soon as we have this couple of software running on the small cluster, we plan to create all new JIPs on this cluster and do not provide any new JIPs as you know as of today. And once we get confident in the process, we will start to look after a couple of volunteer projects to migrate their JIPs over this new infrastructure. And of course, we will ramp up this process of migration to the new setup. While we will do the migration from standalone JIPs, as you know today, to CGE, we will progressively recycle the hardware to augment, to scale our cluster with more hardware. So we will do that incrementally as soon as we move some projects from current setup to CGE. We will reuse the hardware to increase the size of our cluster. And we plan to have at least 80% of the Jenkins instances to be migrated to CGE by 2019. So I guess that you're pretty enthusiastic about the benefits. No, I guess that you have some question about what will change for you. First, be reassured, we don't expect much disruptions for project. We studied carefully the solutions to be sure that you won't have to change everything and start from scratch your builds. So what you have to know is that first, there will be no build on master anymore. So everything will be built on agents. So that eventually your workspaces will disappear as the build happen on an agent that will be killed at some point. It's not provided by Kubernetes. It's a dynamic agent, so anything that stay on the agent will eventually disappear. So if you need to keep artifacts and after your build finish, you need to use the archive artifact feature from Jenkins to be sure it's still accessible after the agent has been killed. So Stu, if you want to add stuff at any point, or if I say any any mistakes, please feel free to jump in.
No, you're good at the moment. One thing I will say, with regard to running builds on masters, the way that you're going to now configure the masters, we can actually get the best out of your resources by tuning the amount of memory and CPU allocated to them anyway. It's never a good method to run builds on masters anyway, but the way that your configuration is going to work, we can put more resource onto the actual pods that are going to end up running your build containers. So it's not just a case of for good practice, which it is. It's the fact that we can get much more resources allocated to where you need it, and that's the actual build agents themselves. So cool.
Thank you, Stu. As everything will run on agents, and the fact that those agents will actually be containers, what we do to prevent as less disruption as possible is to create a Docker image with something as close as what you are used to with the current environment. So usually you call Maven from a shared common path, which is an NFS mount that is available on each bare metal machine where your Jenkins instance runs. So we will create Docker images with all of these still available. Of course, as soon as you want to create your own environment, we will eventually get rid of those base images that mirrors closely what we have today, but in the first time we will try to stick to something very close.
It's fair to say as well, isn't it, after discussions we've had, that it's very much going to be a lift and shift operation to migrate projects over. There are best practices and much better ways of doing things, and when we touched on pipeline earlier, we always recommend when we do our professional services engagements, the best practice is to use pipeline, but we understand in this situation the bigger priority is migrating over to get stability, to get control, control and automation, and just get rid of some of those those time-consuming tasks. But if we have time at the end, we can touch a little bit more on pipeline and the benefits of that.
Yeah, fortunately, sorry, not fortunately. Hopefully, you will get much more than just what you have today. So another disruption that we foresee is that you, for those of you who publish to download eclipse.org via the NFS mount /home/data/httpd/download.eclipse.org, we may need to enforce you to use SFTP instead of just a CP, a command line CP command, because we may not be able to mount the NFS folder on each and every agent. So it's still something that we need to work on, but that could be one of the changes that we need to do to your build. And also, we may not be able to provide the base Docker image as a SUSE Enterprise Linux container, so it may be built based on CentOS or Ubuntu or anything else, but we may not use SUSE Enterprise. So maybe some paths and libs will change between what we have today and what you will get as your environment, as your build environment and the agent. Again, as we will ramp up the process of migration, we are expecting to find those issues early and be able to find workarounds or enlist the way to do that fairly quickly. So that's all for us. Basically, a very short introduction about what we are planning to do. This is an open call for questions, concerns about all of this. Feel free to ask us anything. We are here to. We are here for you.
One thing I'd like to add.
Hello?
Sorry, one thing I'd like to add on your last slide, Mikaël, is that by removing the dependency on NFS and helping projects migrate to an SFTP access to upload artifacts, we help make builds more portable and less dependent on static paths and things just being always in the same location, and that will help builds run on cloud resources or even on your laptop if need be.
Yeah, true. And for those of you who are monitoring the cross-project issues, that's also one of the reasons why we are removing some services that are not really portable, that like the command line, digital signing, stuff that will be removed today as we speak. So any question?
Hello, this is Patrick and Arthur from the Eclipse Scout project. Can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. What we wanted to ask is, we've also had some experience with running those built-in Docker containers, and one issue we always kind of found inefficient was that we are using Maven, and Maven has its huge M2 subfolder where it caches all its already downloaded dependencies. Now with workspaces going away, it usually means all those dependencies have to be re-downloaded again. Do you have any idea or improvement possibilities on that?
Do you want me to take that question? I'm happy to.
Sure.
Yeah, this is a common question we get asked. I'm from a background which was a lot of Maven as well, and we had build agents. We used NFS to store the local Maven repos. I understand where you're coming from about the fact how long it takes to download. There are various ways of doing this. We could, if we wanted, but I really would like to steer away from it, is caching and mounting a file system which has your Maven dependencies in it. That's really not that good practice. At the moment, I know that you do have a Maven cache on site. You use Sonatype's Nexus open source repository manager. Now, hopefully that is going to speed up download times, but I appreciate you're still having to download the artifact. These are the types of questions and discussions I'm going to have when I'm on site. One thing I would like to say, apart from the fact that yes, you could get around with it with caching, is if we get these builds in a manner that they build automatically, if you're not really, we're trying to avoid people really logging into Jenkins itself. Builds should just run. If you've got a lot of churn, obviously, and you've got a lot of dependencies to come down, and then there's a lot of builds, then okay, I appreciate you are kind of waiting for that build to happen. What I have found though with some customers, and I'm sure that's not yourself, is people are doing a build, they're waiting for it to complete, and then they're continuing on with their work. This really should just be happening in the background. In your particular example, do you have a lot of churn, or is it just the fact that you have long build times?
Usually, with our case, our builds have a lot of dependencies, and we really benefit from this cache. So it's mainly long build time.
Yeah, but how often are you building? Are you building on each commit?
We're building on each commit, and we also have some nightly builds that perform tests regularly.
Okay, I can understand. I mean, with the nightly builds, putting dependencies down, okay, is an overhead. Obviously, there's benefits of always putting your dependencies down. You are building from a completely clean workspace every time, but I appreciate you're aware of that. If your build times, are you on check-in, for example, with are you using GitHub or are you a Gerrit user?
We're using Gerrit.
Using Gerrit, okay. This is some questions I've had about Gerrit. I'm not that familiar with it, to be honest with you. Know of it and used it a couple of times, but the intricacies of it and how the a pull request, for example, is handled, I'm not too clear. Yeah, what you've raised is a valid concern. We can get around it by putting when you start your build agent up, you could mount a volume onto it, but it's one of those things that we would need to look at a case-by-case basis. By default, I would say to teams, yes, I appreciate it takes a while to download dependencies, but there are the benefits of it. But yeah, we can work with the guys on this, and we can come up with some kind of solution suggestions when this really becomes an issue.
Okay, thank you very much, and no thanks for all your work.
Pleasure, thank you.
This is Carsten from the XTex project, and we are suffering from very long build times for some jobs. They take almost 2 hours for one build, mainly because of UI testing. And can we expect better performance with the new infrastructure?
Yeah, can I just, sorry, your name again was, and what project?
XTex.
XTex, okay. Okay. Okay, so you're getting long build times, UI testing. On your investigations, what do you think that's down to? Is it are you CPU memory bound, or is there external dependency or external applications or systems interacting with this? How's your UI testing working?
I think it's mainly CPU and maybe also memory. We know that the same builds are running much faster on different infrastructure.
Okay. Well, the very simple answer to that is yes, you should benefit. The good point. This is a good time to mention this. We've been talking about in some of the earlier conversations I've had about resource allocation. So you've got a limited pool of resources within the organization. So as those are only used at build time, that pool is sitting there, it's waiting. We're going to try and work out using Kubernetes namespaces. It's a functionality that CloudBees are looking at, to be able to set a quota that a team is allowed to use. So if you need more CPU and you need more resource, then actually that's fine, because you can configure your particular job to use a specific setting. It will mean, however, you can't run, when I say can't, I don't know the ins and outs, and I don't know how much you'll be allocated. But for example, if you've got a big build, yes, you can add more CPU and memory to it, and then you liaise with the guys to work out what's reasonable, how much you can have, and so on. But yes, it's all configurable, and the benefits of this is you're making the most of all resources available. So simple answer is yes, you can add more CPU and memory if it's available.
Yeah, and something I'd like to add as well. So we don't exactly know today whether it's CPU, memory, or IO bound, your long build time. Thanks to the operation center and Jenkins Enterprise, we'll be able to set up also monitoring tools to get better insights about where and what is consuming resources. So we'll definitely be able to help you understand what is really the bottleneck on your side.
Mikaël, I hope I'm not overstepping the mark. Something we've touched on as well is further down the line. This isn't the priority at the moment, but as I keep emphasising, pipeline. We can explain to the guys. We can go through some of the benefits of that as well. The fact that how your build is actually configured. If we could get some parallel tasks running in there, that may not be appropriate, but pipeline gives you the ability to split out, run some parallel tasks within the build process. So if that is a feasible option as well, you can always get benefits from there as well. Whereas the freestyle type of jobs that you run at the moment, and chaining freestyle jobs, are kind of a bit of a monolithic way of doing a build. So although CPU memory might be an option, and anything else that's noted via statistics from the operations center, pipeline might also be another benefit further down the line.
We already use pipeline jobs.
Oh, that's brilliant. But, so
yeah, but
that's good news.
But one of the pipeline steps is run the Maven Tycho build with UI tests, and this is
okay.
Running for 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
Okay, my apologies for that. When I've had the conversations previously, we weren't too clear on which projects were using pipeline and which weren't. So I'm sorry, I keep repeating the word pipeline constantly.
Yeah, we are very interested in evaluating the new infrastructure, and willing to volunteer in the early migration.
Volunteers are always good. Well done.
Thank you, Carsten. It's already noted that XTEX would like to be one of the project migrated to the new infra.
Okay, this is Ravan from platform team. Actually, we use multiple OS platforms for testing, for our nightly build testing. Will that be possible with this new setup? like we also test on Linux, 3 different configurations on Linux, and 1 each on Windows and Linux, Windows and Mac.
So the idea of so the platform, just for Stu to know a bit more about the platform project. So they have dedicated agents which provide dedicated environment for various testing and build environment. So and for with CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, we will still be able to attach dedicated slaves. So those environments will stay attached only to the platform Jenkins instance. So you won't have anything to do to keep your environment as it is today.
Okay, so we will be having the same dedicated environment for our tests.
Yes.
Okay. So we should be able to configure our resources for the build as well, right? Currently, platform build takes about 2.5 hours. Just the Maven build, it takes about 2 hours to 2.5 hours, and test run for 9 hours. So hopefully we'll get a better times after movement.
If you're Linux, I presume are you aiming to continue your Linux build on your dedicated bespoke build agents?
We actually use dedicated dedicated agents only for the testing. Build can happen for the build. We don't need that dedicated one. That's what.
Okay. That sounds a similar situation to, was it Xtest, the other project?
Yeah.
Whereas we said it with regard to Linux, it's a case of, yes, you can configure resources, but to be able to do that, you will have to do some reworking. So the migration is one side, is one thing. You can migrate over, and there's going to be a little change for you, which is the main aim of this. Further down, yes, you could make some improvements by reconfiguring your build process, and possibly, always the big wins are parallel types of builds or stages in builds and things like that. But yes, it's all possible, certainly.
Yeah, and the thing you will get by just if you stick to the way you're doing stuff, you will have better stability in the build time. We can't assure that it will be much better, or it won't be worse for sure, but we can't assure that it will be much better, but it will be more stable for sure as well.
Sure. Thanks, Mikaël.
Hi, this is Tomáš from Oracle. I have a couple of questions. So first one is whether it will be possible to trigger some jobs on events like pull request on GitHub, or even better on change on the pull request on GitHub. Because actually we are using Travis CI to do that, but for us it will be very nice if we can use Eclipse Jenkins for everything.
I would say that it's already possible to do that with the current setup. So yes, it will still be possible after the migration to CG.
Yeah, great. And the second one is more complicated. So if it will be possible to execute jobs with some complex structure of Docker containers linked together. For example, for Eclipse build and for Eclipse link builds and tests, we are using following scenario. At the beginning, I run the build, then I just take all the source tree with build classes and put them into data-only Docker image. And then I join this data-only Docker image with built infrastructure image and with database, which is used to run some integration tests. So if this will be possible on the new built infrastructure.
Is this what you're doing? Are you doing something like that at the moment?
Sorry?
Sorry, are you already doing that at the moment on your current infrastructure?
We are not doing it on Eclipse Foundation. We are doing it internally.
Okay.
And I made some scripts to do that.
I understand. This really has no bearing necessarily on the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. If you can build a Docker, if you have a Docker file, you're building a Docker file up, you're making changes, you're doing a multi-stage kind of pipeline. Yes, it's all very, very possible, and that's I've seen many pipelines. It's a classic use case to do what you've just suggested. So yes, it is very, very possible to do that. But as I say, I won't take the credit for CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. It is more along the lines of having a correct Docker file and a pipeline, and then we can use the benefits of CJE in actually using resources wisely and building those containers. But yes, it's possible, certainly.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, hello, this is Jan from Oracle. We just migrated Jersey to Eclipse Foundation, and we have no jobs migrated to our Jenkins yet. So probably it makes sense for Jersey to sign up for or volunteering in being part of the tests in new infrastructure. So if I can volunteer, then it would be good.
Thanks, Jan. It's noted.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Doug from CDT. I was wondering, so it's kind of a hacky solution to get remote slaves up right now. Is that something this will fix, or is remote slaves even possible?
Do you specifically need remote slaves, or is it just a resource issue that you've decided to use your own?
Well, I'm looking mainly at Windows and Mac for running UI tests.
Yeah, absolutely, very valid.
I also have my own Kubernetes cluster here that I can contribute when needed.
Yeah, it will make life a lot easier with CJE and Kubernetes. All we do, we add a service which is basically another ingress in, which allows the JNLP ports on Jenkins or the operations center to be able to talk externally. We'll set that up when we install CJE, when I'm on site with the guys, to make sure that's possible. Then from then, it's just a permissions and a process type of thing, whether Mikaël and the guys are happy with you guys attaching your own masters, your own build agents to your masters, or they would do that for you. But it's a very simple process. As long as there's network connectivity, obviously. I have to state that.
Of course. Yeah, because right now I think the ports are closed, so.
Yeah, on CJE, and this is down to policy, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn, we'll be opening those ports up because you have, or within the organization, you have so many external agents, we need those ports open. But we only need to open it once for the actual Kubernetes cluster itself. Oh, sorry, OpenShift, I do apologize for the OpenShift cluster. It's the same kind of thing, but you get my point. Yep.
Yeah, we'll see about opening ports.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to put my foot in it there, guys.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to pick up.
It'd be easier if I was in the same room. You could have given me a dirty look then, so don't mention it.
It was just wishful thinking on my part, anyway.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if we could get stuff like that going.
No,
somehow.
absolutely, and I should mention that Microsoft has stepped up and given us some free Microsoft Azure resources that we definitely want to tap into. So we'll do what we can to make sure everything runs securely, but at the same time make sure that we have maximum flexibility.
Yeah, security's a big issue for sure. Thanks.
Would it be worth me touching on the control and upgrade of masters and plugins? And then while I'm doing that, maybe people might think of any other questions they might want to cover.
Sure. Just
Okay, sure. Okay. Just one of the benefits that they're going to have now with the operations center is, at the moment, when you want to upgrade a master, it's a very, very manual process. Now there's a lot of options available. What there is a centralized jobs that can be set up. These jobs can run on a filter. So for example, it will look at all of the masters that has connected to it, and it will say any master at a set level, I now want to go and automatically upgrade these masters to a new level. All that is actually doing under the covers is setting a new image for the managed master and then re-provisioning the pod via Kubernetes or OpenShift in this particular case. Now, that is, and again, down to a process decision. All masters could be upgraded in one go, regardless of what version they're on, and upgraded to the latest version. Or we can go in subsets, or one by one. But this gives the nice flexibility now, and the guys will, I'm sure, communicate with you how that will be managed. The other benefits are as well is our plugins. It happens in a very similar way. We can push plugin updates. We can set a master that when it restarts to go and automatically upgrade its plugins. It gives you the flexibility in what works for each project or within the organization. One of the benefits of CloudBees is obviously the support, but we also do the assurance program. So our images are tested against a subset of well-maintained plugins available. There is a list of those available that we will show you. But the CloudBees assurance program runs with an application within the operations center and the masters. If the masters are opted in, which we always advise that you should do, when it comes to an upgrade, it will check anything installed against the upgrade and highlight any issues you may particularly have. It is possible if someone, for example, needed to run with a plugin that was outside of the program, you can opt out, install the plugin and opt back in again. However, it will highlight to you that you have some issues now. Your upgrade will not be as smooth or guaranteed to be as smooth as possible. So there is a trade-off on that. We've had discussions already about how we can look at the plugins already installed out there and the plugins that are available or within that particular program. So there's some work to be done. On the subject of plugins, with Jenkins, there's been a great explosion over the last many years of plugins for everything. When we look at my favorite word, I know, pipelines, we try to, where possible, is to keep things as uncomplicated as possible. So if it's possible to do something without a plugin and it's reusable, we would use another technique we have called global libraries within Jenkins, and this is reusable code stored in source control that then can be used within other people's pipelines. So there's always techniques and different ways of doing things. But the main reason now is, the main benefit now is this can be controlled centrally. Even the monitoring and including the backups as well of the operations center and the master, these can all be controlled centrally. So it's going to give, it's going to hopefully save the guys a lot of time in doing the onerous maintenance and upgrades. Has anybody got any other questions I'd like to raise?
If this is Patrick again from Scout, if there are no specific questions, I wanted to ask the guys from the infra team about how they came to the choice, how they chose the Redshift platform. And I mean, there's the obvious choice, of course, for the CloudBees one, but if you maybe can give us some thoughts you had when choosing those.
Sure. So OpenShift, we chose that because it is a recommended solution by CloudBees to set up CGE. So of course we've looked at it a bit more than other distributions. And the fact that we also had great support from Red Hat guys who, as we said, gave us made donation of this software to the foundation. So that's really nice. And as it was the distribution, the recognized solution by CloudBees to set up CGE, it was just a no-brainer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, this is hello. This is Jan again from Oracle. When we volunteered for starting with the new infrastructure, what's the next step? Should we wait for being asked for starting work on new infrastructure being assigned to us, or do we need to do some steps in order to start working on the new infrastructure, or what are the next steps?
So as I said earlier, so CG is not yet running on the infra, so we first need to complete the setup and get familiar with all of this by creating new stuff on it. So new project will get Jenkins from CG first, and once we get familiar with how CG is working for new Jenkins instances, we will start to look at for volunteers. So we already have two, so Xtex and Jersey. If you want to volunteer, we can put you on the list as well. We expect to make those experimentation early during the summer, and then ramp up the migration, where we will actively reach out to project to say and to find a date where it's convenient for both the project and us to do the actual migration to the new infra.
Okay, so the next step is to wait for the Eclipse infrastructure guys to say, yeah, we are ready, and we can start working on it. So on our side, we just wait.
Yes. If you don't want to be an early adopter, definitely yes. Just wait for us. We will call you.
Okay, thank you.
If you need to build today and you do not have an infrastructure, then we can set you up with a good old-fashioned Jenkins instance, and you can build right now. All that work is not wasted. Your jobs and all that can be migrated. But if you're willing to wait for the new setup and you want to be one of the first ones to try it out, then if you can wait, then be my guest. But you don't have to wait. I guess is the point I was trying to make.
Yeah. I understand that. Thank you.
Hi, this is Yamini from Oracle. I had a question on what kind of base images will be provided to start with.
So for the first one we're providing is something that is close to what we have today for people who migrate. For new project and project who have who have specific needs, we will just talk with them. We don't have any pre-made list about the images that will be provided.
Okay, so at least for the projects that I've been working on, I need specific versions of JDK and Maven and Ant. So I'd have to request for those, for such images.
Yes.
Okay.
And you will, we will probably set up, my hope is to be able to let you to be self-provisioned on that, so to be able to define the Docker files of the environment you need for your build, and we will pull those Docker files on a regular basis, or it will be pushed, whatever. But we will let project define the environment, and we'll make sure that we will use that environment and define linked those Docker image definition to the to your Jenkins environment.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else with questions for Mikaël or Stu? Or myself, but I don't know much. All right, so I guess not. Worst case, if anyone has any other questions, you can always reach us on the usual channels, either CBI Dev, which is the preferred channel for the Eclipse Common Build. Some questions also get asked on the cross-project mailing list. I know that myself and Mikaël monitor both of those mailing lists on a regular basis. With that being said, I have recorded today's presentation, today's call. So I will redistribute that recording in some form or fashion later on today. It's still in the late morning here in Ottawa time. So I'll put that together, and I will post the links on the CBI Dev mailing list, and also on my usual Twitter channel. We do have a link to a migration FAQ. As you've probably noticed, there's not a whole lot to the migration in terms of expected disruptions. So the migration FAQ really does not contain a whole lot. But I've sent out links to those to that migration FAQ on the CBI Dev mailing list as well. So feel free to reload that from time to time. And as mentioned, we will continue to communicate with the broader community our intentions of moving forward with this migration. With that being said, I'd like to extend my thank yous to Stu Brown from CloudBees for joining us today. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Stu.
And with that, I close it off. Thanks, everyone, for participating and for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.